I could go on, but I think I've almost talked enough. I could tell you about a patient I saw while doing a surgery for another doctor soon after starting in Gillingham. He'd come for a certificate to go back to work after a spell of backache. As I was writing it, he said that he'd been bad-tempered to his wife the day before, and this was not like him. He wondered if it could have been caused by the 5-day course of pills he had been given. I saw from the notes that he had been prescribed Fortril, a drug that has been widely promoted as non-opiate in any age, in any condition, wherever pain presents, suitable for children. With experience of heroin addiction, I immediately recognized the mild withdrawal symptoms of anxiety and irritability 48 hours after the course of treatment had finished. As I thought about the implications, it became evident that a footballer, for example, having sprained a ligament one Saturday, could be given a 5-day course of treatment with this drug and 2 days later be judged fit to play the following Saturday. During the game, he would be at the height of the withdrawal phase. This would make him irritable, prone to arguing after unfavourable decisions by the referee, and the crowd being drawn in. It was at about this time that football hooliganism began to become a problem. The effect of this discovery was to make me decide I needed to keep in touch with the drug scene. I therefore could not sell my flat as planned and had to commute to London regularly, thus creating unanticipated expenses which prevented me settling properly in Gillingham. I could tell you about the case of fetal distress in the second stage of labour that I treated with a drug called Doctor. I delivered a boy who was pink to the very tips of his fingers. This was something I had never seen before, either at medical school in British Columbia or St Stephen's in Chelsea, where I worked for a few months as a house officer in 1966. Newborn babies were always a little bit blue round the edges, having been partially asphyxiated on their way into the world. I could tell you about the case of LSD I brought down to earth after a grueling 20 hours of psychotherapy in 3-hour sessions. But I could not charge him because he was my father's patient, and terms and conditions forbade private treatment under such circumstances. With this attitude by the National Health Service, there was no point in pursuing the discoveries I had made in this case. I could tell you about how, when I was in Gillingham, the Health Service authorities still sought every possible opportunity to withhold remuneration, citing NHS terms and conditions. My initial practice allowance, designed to make an area short of doctors more attractive, was terminated on the grounds that income had risen above the statutory limit. I had been doing surgeries for other doctors to make more money. My unusual and unanticipated research expenses were not considered. Then my name was arbitrarily removed from the maternity list. I had not attended an appropriate course at the local hospital. With the practice attracting young married couples having babies, income from this source was halved. Then in 1973, traffic wardens started interrupting surgeries because my car was safely but illegally parked to enable me to respond quickly to emergencies. Doctors had been parking there since the beginning of the century. These interruptions continued in spite of complaints to the inspector in charge. This was as irresponsible as jogging a surgeon's arm during an operation. It was the last straw. I resigned from the NHS. Never having been able to afford a wife and family, I was not emotionally blackmailed by domestic responsibilities into tolerance of such antisocial behaviour. So it was that, depressed, penniless, and desperate for a living, I sought asylum abroad from political persecution at home, like many other British doctors at that time. I could tell you about an interesting 9 months on a Middle East oil field. It was very refreshing to live with the humility of Islam after the hubris of the West. It was necessary to work through an interpreter. On the first day, there was nothing seriously wrong with my first patient. I told him through the interpreter that it would get better by itself. He started to translate and then stopped, puzzled, not quite sure what I meant and how to translate. Nature will make it better, I said. Immediately, his puzzled look disappeared. Inshallah Zain, he said to the patient, which being roughly translated means God will make it okay. The patient immediately looked very relieved, happy with the advice I had been given, and thanked me warmly. Immediately I understood the Muslim concept of God. The most fundamental scientific observation anyone can make is that the world is bigger than people. Muslims call that wider world Allah. We call it nature. For me, God ceased to be some vague Christian concept one could believe in or not. God became a verifiable scientific fact. But the oil company had deceived me about the number of patients at risk. There were about 10,000 that I was looking after round the clock, single-handed. I had been led to believe there were only a few hundred. I had therefore negotiated an inadequate salary. Since I studied medicine to earn a living, I felt ripped off yet again. I resigned and retired permanently and prematurely from clinical practice at the age of only 38. Bye.